I've started spinning this off a little bit, and I'm talking about election integrity in history and what we can do now. Brian Judd brought up that really good point. What are you going to do now? Okay, so I've got a few suggested what we can do. So even before we were an actual country, Americans were a people that believed in fair representation. You remember that saying? No taxation without. Indeed, that became the war cry in the colonies 10 years before 1776. And the U.S. Constitution that they adopted enshrines free and fair elections. The Vermont Constitution of 1786 provided for universal adult male suffrage. One man, one vote. One citizen, one vote is what it became in 1919 when the woman got the suffrage. So the whole Vermont town meeting tradition, for example, everyone here been to a town meeting? Participated, I hope? All right, good. This assumes and protects the grassroots integrity of our elections. You speak, you listen, you vote, and the votes then are counted. You make the decision and you live with it. When I was a Justice of the Peace in Cambridge, in groups of two, one Republican, one Democrat, we would go up on the stage of the elementary school where the meetings were held, and we would count the votes while the voters watched. And now that is accountability. That is election integrity. We need more of that. Sometimes Vermonters have backed up their votes with the supreme sacrifice. It gives me chills every time I think about the election of 1864, which was decided by the soldiers of the Union Army. By this time, most of them had been in battle, in combat, the survivors, for 1 to 3 years. They knew if they voted yes for Abe Lincoln, it was going to be more of the same. More awful food, more sleeping outdoors, more getting bayoneted by the Confederates. Okay? This is what they faced. Or they could vote for McClellan and go home. And the Union would remain divided and the slaves would remain slaves. Vermont went 76% for Abraham Lincoln. And think about it, only the men were voting back then, right? And where were all the men? They were in the Army. So that Army, that's who decided that election. And they said, we will keep fighting. We will keep fighting. God bless them. The second highest total after Kansas was Vermont, saying yes to Abe Lincoln. Sometimes Vermont's voted on the losing side. For example, beginning in 1832, Maine always voted on the winning side of presidential elections. Every year, every 4 years, Maine won. And the saying became, as Maine goes, so goes the nation. Well, in 1936, Maine voted Republican, so did Vermont, and all the other states elected Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So, which caused FDR's campaign manager to quip, as Maine goes, so goes Vermont. But win or lose, we've never doubted the fairness of the results until now. Our legislature and our governor welcome non-citizen voting, in municipalities, which of course then have an effect on, for example, if you vote for a school budget, then it affects school funding. Okay, so there's no like this sacred circle being put around municipalities, and it's not affecting anyone outside of the municipalities. Yes, it is. Okay, so we have mailed-in ballot laws that do not offer the most basic protections against ballot fraud. What we have is the Secretary of State who assures us that it's not going to be a problem. And you can't prove that it's been a problem. So stop telling us it's going to be a problem when, you know, the very basic protections, no. And it isn't like Rob Roper and Ethan Allen Institute didn't go into their committee meetings and say, look, here's a problem. If you don't do this, there's going to be ballot fraud. No. So a great lack of curiosity about potential ballot fraud is part of our mail-in ballot law. I saw it happen. But even assuming good intentions, even the best intentioned laws can be misused. I give you Exhibit A, the anti-racketeering federal RICO laws. The RICO laws were passed so that they could prosecute the mob. And everyone went, yay, go get them. And they did. And then a few years later, they were used to prosecute anti-abortion protesters. I was one of them, actually. The Patriot Act was passed to stop Islamic terrorists. Yay! It's now being turned on Trump supporters. So the moral of that story is that the original intent matters less than the actual power a law gives to the government. Because if there's one thing we can believe, it's that someday someone in government will be tempted to misuse the power given for anti-democratic purposes. So like Brian Judd asked, Brian, you still here?
Yes.
Okay. Like he asked, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, I would suggest, I've got a couple possible what are you doings, what can you do's, and one of them is to join the system, is to be a justice of the peace. Last year we were counting votes in Berlin, so I got to be sort of there on the ground when there was, questionable votes or whatever. We could actually participate in counting them. I also got to look at the town's voting machines. And I cannot tell you how many times we've been told, there's no internet connection. These are just dumb counting machines. They're just calculators. There's no internet connection. Okay. Can I look at the machine? Well, all right, if you must. And I did, and darn it, but there was a little USB thing right in the back of the machine. A portal. I mean, there wasn't anyone in it. I don't know if anyone used it. But I know a USB portal when I see it. And that's what it was. So it does sort of make me wonder, okay? They are at least connectable one way or the other. So there's that. You can be a JP. The way you get to be a JP, a Justice of the Peace in Vermont, usually is you go to your town's GOP or Democratic committees because they pick the slate of candidates who will be up for election for the Justice of the Peace. That's just how it works in Vermont. So that is how you get to be a JP. And at least, I must say, at least one of the political parties, the GOP, is working hard this year on election integrity. They realized that maybe they were a day late and a dollar short last time, and they are working on this, local, state, national. So whatever your feelings might be about the GOP, they are trying to do something, and I would encourage you to contact them and get involved. The other thing is participating in your own town, either as a JP or as just an unofficial observer. Make yourself known that you will be watching. You don't need to be a jerk about it, but you can just try to be present as much as possible. You can volunteer. A simple thing would be, with our wonderful Attorney General deciding that people who vociferously push back against CRT at school board meetings are now suspected of being like, illegal actions and everything and domestic terrorists. I would strongly encourage you, everyone here has a school board, go to the school board meeting. Just go. And during the public comments, stand up and say, I just want you to know, if you do, I oppose CRT. I request all of your curriculum. I would like to see it. And me and my friends will be here. I know this is happening in some towns. And this is something you can do. And I've been on the other side there of, when they're watching, it's different. When someone is out there is watching, it puts a check in their spirit, as you might say. So I would encourage that. Another thing is just be your own media. This is, Vermont Daily Chronicle, all it is one guy on a laptop. Okay, I've got a journalism background, okay. I've sort of devoted a lot of time to this, but really, you can be your own media. One of the things that I see so many, for example, one real simple thing to do, and this is easy, everyone can do this. If you have ever shared a video, anyone here shared a video? Yeah. And have you said, watch this, or this is cool? Don't do that. Watch the video yourself, and then write one sentence about what this video is about. In this video, Dr. Peter McCullough explains why treatment rather than vaccine is more effective in fighting COVID-19. That's all you got to do. One sentence. And it's often even in the video. You can just cut and paste it, put it on there. But that tells me, oh, this is now worth my while. So that is just one simple, effective way you can become your own media. Because we need to be our own media, because they're not doing it anymore. One of the cool things this week that happened with Vermont Daily Chronicle is one of my stories got picked up by the Epoch Times. There was a link to it. They linked to my story. Yeah, isn't that cool? It was the one on Karen Scow, the poor woman who was assaulted by a crazy leftist. And then lost her job because she wouldn't wear a mask and couldn't get vaccinated. And they linked to that story. And then later on that week, the story I wrote a week or two ago about our Vermont's pandemic of the unvaccinated. Have you ever heard that expression before? The pandemic of the unvaccinated? I cannot tell you, because I listened to Governor Scott's press conferences, how many times, he just said, I'm sorry. How many times I've heard this expression, the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And so the little detail left out of their information was, okay, of the 33 deaths in September, how many were unvaccinated and how many were vaccinated? Oddly enough, that little detail wasn't in there. So I sent an email off to the PR guy, and he said, well, as a matter of fact, 25 of the deaths were vaccinated. Oh, 76%. And so I just wrote up a little statistical story, 76%, no spin, no nothing, just the numbers, just the facts, ma'am. That got picked up by, let me see, Gateway Pundit, they did? I didn't know that. InfoWars apparently did, and someone else did, and someone else did. And normally I get about 3,000 views a day. That's a really, really good day. Last week, Wednesday, I think I had 14,000 views. So, and thank you. And the reason that's really cool is this is local media, little humble local media. We are having, and I say we because many of you are readers, and if you're not, please see me after, and I'll be glad to sign you up and all. And you contribute news, and some of you are financial donors. Thank you very much. But we are contributing to the national news discussion. And they are contributing to us. And this whole big alternative state, local, national media is happening. It's popping up. Oh, just yesterday, this whole craziness with Merrick Garland and the if you go to the school board, you're a terrorist kind of thing. I can't tell you who he is, but he's a former very high-level state official, is also a cartoonist. And he wrote me a cartoon yesterday based on this. It inspired him. Merrick Garlick inspired him to write a cartoon of the Tiananmen Square tank with a Vermont mom and a child standing in front of the tank. And the tank says, Biden DOJ, written on the side of it. That's going in tomorrow. You better believe it. And this would not happen if people didn't just say, you know what, I'm going to do something here. That guy decided to do something. Rohan here decided he was going to shoot these videos for us, and not just here, but a dozen different places. Yeah. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've all done something, and we can all be our own media in some way, according to our time and our gifts and everything. So please do that. And the last thing I want to say, how am I doing for time, Mark?
Right on.
Okay. And that's it. Don't give up. Don't give up. I could tell you, Winston Churchill, never give up, never give up. I could do that, but I won't. But you get the idea, because we don't know where this is going to end. There are a lot of people who are like you and me in Europe in the late 1940s as the socialist utopia descended on Eastern Europe, who thought, this is awful, this is terrible, but they fought it anyway. And there was a fellow, and one of the greatest, of course, was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, our Cavendish, Vermont resident. And the morning he was deported, the Russians finally said, we've had enough of you, get out, get out, get out. He wrote an op-ed for his readers, and he said, my brothers and sisters, whatever you do, live not by lies. If you hear a lie, call out that lie. If their language is a lie in itself, don't use their language. Oh, a wonderful example of that, I'm having so much fun with this, is, I don't know if you knew, but last Tuesday, the Climate Commission of Vermont scheduled a BIPOC-only public hearing for climate issues. Basically, white people, you can't come on. You can't participate. You can't talk. You're not welcome at our hearing. You can go to this other hearing in the back of the kitchen. Well, anyway, this other hearing, but you can't be on this one. And see, in my world, that's called discrimination. In their world, it's equity. Well, their language is wrong, it's a lie, and I'm going to register to participate in that meeting, and if they have another Zoom security issue, which they had to cancel their one last week for because they had a Zoom security issue, which is the wrong people signed up. The wrong skin color signed up. Well, then they'll just have to deal with that, won't they? So one of the points this book makes is people get together, usually in small groups, and they see what's going on. They judge what's going on. That's discrimination. And they act. They register to participate, for example. But that could apply to almost anything. I see that they're trying to squelch free speech at the school boards. I judge that this is disastrous for our country, and I will act. I will show up at our school board meeting. Okay? See, judge, act. And for me, it really helps that I know that I'm part of something a little bit bigger than the United States of America. For me, I'm part of a faith community that's part of a kingdom, a forever kingdom. And so I'm okay. And there are responsibilities that come with that, with speaking up, with staying true, with never giving up. And there's also great comfort in knowing that whatever happens here, it's the bottom of the ninth, God bats last. You know, God bats last. He's going to win. So, Mark, that's all I got to say. If anyone, is there anyone who doesn't get Vermont Daily Chronicle? I will bring my sign-up sheet right back to you and anyone else who doesn't.
I get forwarded your stuff.
Well, I think you should give me your email address. Good. Good. Here you go, Mark. I'll do that while you do the next. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
Thank you, Guy Page. That was very good, very good. I appreciate it very much.
One last thing. Savannah Quello of TPUSA told me that, yep, October 18th, Charlie Kirk, founder, is coming to UVM. You may or may not have heard, but the Antifa types went and got him kicked out of the Hilton on Battery Street. No. They caved, they welched. So, but they said, oh, he's coming. He's absolutely coming.
He gets to be in my house.
And he's going to Tom Licata beat you to it. Yeah. He's going to be speaking somewhere. He will be here on the 18th. And I have...
Will they send a notice where he's going to be at?
Yes, but what you're going to need to be doing is sort of watching social media, maybe contacting them.
You have it on your paper.
And I'm going to, assuming they give me all the information, yes. So you just pass these out. Okay, Mark, I'm done.
You're all done?
Yeah.
You don't have Mike Lindell promo code? Come on, Guy, you're famous. You've been doing a good job. I like your article. I hear what he's saying about We Are the News. We got a pretty poor system of news here in America. In Vermont especially, we got the communist WCAX, we got the Vermont Digger, we got Front Porch Forum. None of them do diddly, although WCAX did put me on live at an interview from this spring saying that it was absolutely absurd to treat everybody like they had leprosy. You know, it's just wrong. They did put that on. I gave them a 10-minute interview, but they cut out a little 30-minute clip. My friend saw it. So I've been putting up videos and spreading news. I picked one video up. It was the U.S. Senate. I happened to pick it up before anybody else did, and it had 200,000 views in 3 weeks. That's the best one I had, but we can do this because we can be the news, and Guy Page is really helping with that. So Timothy Price, we're going to come back to Timothy Price for a little bit. I love the presentation. It's horrible that they Hillaried your ballots, you know. It's just wrong. They denied me a recount too. But if the ballots are dead, you can't count them, right?
This is my takeaway, and I think it's applicable to the situation that we're in. The election law clearly is not conducive for citizens to find out how the BCA reported. As I indicated when I confronted the town clerk, she did not want the citizens to know that there had been miscounts in the Fairleigh election. So that needs to be corrected. When a statewide recount discloses errors in a town's reporting, it should be mandatory that the town review their other races. The state offering vote tabulators is not a remedy. When there is a crisis, the state will identify the cause and offer a remedy, further removing the opportunity to have direct local oversight in elections. It is necessary that the BCA knows that some races will be hand counted after a machine count, so that it is extremely risky for the BCA members to miscount votes. It is the intent of Vermont's Constitution for the citizens of the state to have control of their government and for the officials to make every effort to remedy their reasonable concerns. The Fairly Select Board, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General might be characterized as being proactive of their positions while not acting in the interests of the public. Why did the town clerk destroy the ballots after promising to allow their re-examination? You know, if she was worried about election law, she was perfectly capable of simply holding the ballots in the vault until it came to a resolution. There was no urge legally for her to destroy the ballots. Why did the town BCA advise their destruction while subject of court proceedings? This was the excuse that she gave. She said the Board of Civil Authority and the Select Board particularly wanted them destroyed. Why did the town of Fairleigh spend $4,000 to keep the ballots from being re-examined? That's the biggest question I have as a citizen of the town. And why was the evidence destroyed essential for the purposes of my claim? Voters that I have discussed this with expressed their concern that they were not informed of the voting errors by the town's BCA. The process of democracy can only be effective if the voters are informed of the actions of their officials, so they can be voted out of office if warranted. Elections must be transparent with direct supervision at the local level. Ballots must be regarded as public documents, which they are now. Ballots must never be destroyed while PRA requests are pending. Whenever a statewide recount reveals errors in one race, the town must recount all the races. If machines are used, then 3 races must be hand counted to verify the accuracy of the machines. After a recount, the clerk must publish in the local paper and shall post in 3 public places and to the chair of political parties within 1 day the results of the recount. This is necessary in order to report errors in a timely manner. Citizen voters need to be informed of their officials' performance. That's it.
How can I get a copy of that lessons learned, Timothy, right here?
Do you have a thumb drive, or if you email me on the audit chat, if you just message me on the audit chat, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Is that okay? I don't know how you turn this off.
Oh, it's over?
That's it.
You got it, Tim? All done, the end? What, hello?
I think that's enough. I have a segment of me bringing up, I confronted the officers of
You want to use a mic?
Yeah, we can't hear you.
I had to push a button to make it turn on.
At the 2009 town meeting, I asked the chairman of the select board why it was necessary for them to fight my request for ballots. And the chairman of the select board said that whenever a town is sued, they have to defend themselves. And I said, defend yourself from what? And the clerk's husband said, from you, Tim. And I said, from me, the only thing I was doing was asking to have the ballots recounted, which the Board of Civil Authority wanted and the clerk wanted. So why did you spend $4,000 just to keep us from looking at those ballots? And the chairman of the select board simply repeated, whenever a town is sued, it must defend itself. And that was the only reply he had.
week. So Tim, the suggestions, the things that you learned, are they law yet? Or is that something as?
What is law is that public records, once the ballots are public records, they are sealed until the end of the required retention period. Whether it's 90 days for local elections, state elections, or 22 months if it's a federal election. But once those ballots are released, if there is a PRA request, they have to be surrendered to you. So this is my suggestion. I don't know how we are going to get a Vermont audit. But the first thing I would do is for every precinct in the state to make a formal public records request to their town clerk. Once that's done, nothing can be destroyed. That request is in, they have to be surrendered to you. That's the first thing the Supreme Court has guaranteed to us as citizens. So we may have other ways of going about it, but it's not that long before the 22 months is up. It's going to be next September 4th, I believe, from this last election. That's going to come by pretty fast. You know how slow the legal system works. So if every town had a request for access to those ballots, that would put an end to their destruction. And they have to be surrendered to you according to the Supreme Court. So that's one avenue, is all I'm saying. And I hope there are others and better ones. But if we did that now, we know that works.
Can
So
you get those records before they're unsealed? I mean, is there a way to do that? or-
the request has to be in before the records are unsealed, and it does not have to go through the court. You can make a public records request without bothering with the courts.
But can you get them before they're unsealed? Is that?
Pardon me? It has to be made before the records are unsealed,
But-
yeah.
But can you get the records before they're unsealed?
No.
Is that like court?
Not the current status. Now, what Arizona and you know, Michigan and other states are doing, I don't know. The law reads, if you read election law, the only way that you can get to the ballots before they're unsealed is if there is a committee from the legislature that is authorized to get the ballots. You can do it that way.
You can't do it under court order?
Well, you have to get a court order.
Well, yeah.
You have to sue the town and all that, you know. But what I'm saying is that the prescribed way of doing it is to get the legislature, to get a committee from the legislature to ask for the ballots. But in our legislature, I don't think we have a prayer.
And you have to do that in 10 days somehow.
Excuse me?
I said you have to do that in 10 days somehow.
That's right. 10 days from the town that it, I'm not sure what the 10 days is from. I would think it would be from the time that the election recount has been announced, which was December 21st, which is a terrible time to try to get any work done.
Well, it seems designed this way, because when you read
I
the
think so.
statutes-
If you read all of this really carefully, they have had years, both parties have had years to work out exactly how you do this. And the citizens really are clueless.
Can